Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Horror Mine, where we talk about mysteries, thrillers, and horror movies. My name is Vic Shy, and in this video, I'm continuing my quest to get over my fear and childhood trauma by going over the 2003 Japanese horror film, Ju-ON The Grudge 2. The film is once again directed by series creator Takashi Shimizu, and follows a new group of poor unfortunate souls that get entangled in the Ju-ON curse. The film follows the same template as the original, as the events are told through 6 chapters in non-chronological order. However, the timeline in this film is a lot more jumbled and convoluted, which may confuse first-time viewers of the series. I'll be going over the events that take place throughout this terrifying film and explaining the ending that may have a couple people asking what the heck just happened. If you enjoy this video, make sure to click the like button as it helps me get one step closer to overcoming my childhood trauma. But without further ado, sit back and relax and join me as we explore the terrifying and bizarre world of Ju-ON The Grudge 2. Our movie begins with a quiet drive through the streets of Tokyo with engaged couple Masashi and Kiyoko. Kiyoko is a famous actress nicknamed the Horror Queen and is also pregnant. As expected with any horror movie car ride, shenanigans begin with Masashi accidentally running over a black cat. They attempt to drive away, but the ghost child known as Toshio has already found a cozy spot underneath the steering wheel and causes the car to crash. This Tokyo Drift sequel is a lot darker than I expected. The first chapter follows Kiyoko and the events following the car crash. She is accompanied at the hospital by her mother, and Masashi has fallen into a coma. Kiyoko has presumably lost her baby during the crash and is still being haunted by Toshio. Sometime later, while filming one of her horror movies, one of the extras named Chiharu walks in and screams unscripted. She stares at Kiyoko, terrified, and suddenly passes out. Kiyoko goes to a doctor who says that she is 3.5 months pregnant and that everything is fine. She is shocked to hear this as she thought she lost her baby during the crash. Kiyoko comes home one night to her mother sleeping in the living room. She sees the reflection of Toshio hovering over her mother in the window and finds him hiding underneath the table. Unfortunately, Toshio's visit had murderous intent as her mother never wakes up and is now dead. The next chapter follows a woman named Tomoko who works as a television show host. While working on a script inside her apartment, she hears a loud thumping noise coming from her wall. She speaks to a hairstylist named Megumi about their new show that will star the horror queen herself, Kyoko Hirase. The show's director, Keisuke, tells them that the show will be about the haunted house located out in Narima Ward. He is of course referring to the cursed and haunted Saeki house. That night, Tomoko heads home and we see the shadow of what appears to be a body hanging from the ceiling. Her boyfriend Nori comes home and she tells him about the loud thumps she keeps hearing on her wall. She says they always happen at around 12:30 p.m. which shows that it has been several days since the noises started. They both hear the loud thumping at 12:27, which they cannot explain as she lives in the corner apartment. Sometime later, Tomoko is rehearsing her script with Kiyoko while Nori tries calling her on the phone. He heads to her apartment later that night and finds Tomoko sitting on the floor looking terrified, but we do not see what she is looking at. He suddenly receives a call from Tomoko saying she just finished with work, and it turns out she was never in the apartment. Tomoko returns home and finds Nori's dead body hung from his neck by long black hair. Toshio then begins playing with his dead body by repeatedly pushing it against the wall, which also knocks over the coffee cup. Kyoko descends from the ceiling and kills Tomoko at exactly 12:27 p.m., who is also hung with the Onryo's long black hair. Looks like Kyoko gifted her son with the perfect gift for this holiday season. Get yours today while supplies last. This reveals that Tomoko was being shown signs of her and Nori's death before it happened through some kind of time loop related to the curse. The thumping noise she kept hearing at 12:27 was the sound of her and Nori's dead bodies hitting against the wall, which also knocked over the coffee cup. Tomoko was shown a small glimpse of Nori's death, while Nori witnessed her reaction to it. This is the first of this film's cool but convoluted ways of showing that the Juwon curse is so powerful that it is now able to manipulate time, something that was shown to a degree in the first film. The next chapter follows the story of hairstylist Megumi and chronologically takes place before the previous two chapters. This is the pivotal moment where everyone involved in the show becomes cursed. Tomoko is the host of the show and begins telling the story of the Saeki house murderers. Housewife Kyoko Saeki was brutally murdered by her husband Takeo as he discovered she was in love with another man. Takeo seemingly died a mysterious death and their young son Toshio was never found. This, as we know, gave birth to the powerful Ju-On curse. All those who enter the Saeki house become cursed and are doomed to die a horrible death. One can also become cursed by coming into contact with someone already cursed, acting like a transmittable virus that goes from person to person. Nori is our first unfortunate example as he never stepped foot inside the house, yet his fate was sealed when he came into contact with his cursed girlfriend, Tomoko. This would appear to be one of the first instances in the series where someone became cursed before even entering the house. Tomoko apparently first sets foot inside the house during the filming of the show. However, she doesn't make contact with Nori until seeing his dead body later that night, showing that she was already cursed prior to entering the house by an unknown source. Either that or the time loop caused her and Nori to be cursed retroactively. While filming inside the house, the sound guy says he heard a strange noise coming from Kyoko's microphone. Megumi gives Kiyoko an omamori charm for an easy birth and knows that she is pregnant.
もう少し怖い感じかと思ってたんだけどさ。
We all think that at first. We are all wrong.
The house enters a time loop as we see a moment in time when Kayako and Toshio were happily living their lives inside the house. Toshio seems to notice Kiyoko, but I don't believe that this version of Toshio is a malevolent extension of the curse. I believe that this is the normal human version of Toshio that is caught in the time loop of the house. If we take a look at his clothes, he is wearing the same outfit he did at the time of his mother's murder. This moment in time of happiness between Toshio and Kayako possibly happened right before her murder, showing that they are possibly doomed to relive the gruesome events over and over again. I believe this means that they are unable to break free and move on, which is why the curse is so powerful and relentless. Kiyoko and Megumi notice a strange black spot in the upstairs bedroom. After the shoot, Tomoko attempts to call Nori on his phone. This is the same phone call he receives right before his death.
今ロケ終わったとこなんだけど。
This helps us establish a timeline for the series of events. Kiyoko and Masashi's crash occurs right after Tomoko and Nori's death, as in the very first scene, we are specifically told it is 27 minutes after midnight, right after the filming of the show.
時刻は12時27分を回りました。
As Keisuke is closing up the house, Megumi runs back upstairs to grab her makeup bag. The mysterious black spot briefly appears to have a black shadow looming over it with handprints pressed onto the carpet. Keisuke finds a torn picture of Katsuya and Kazumi Tokunaga, the couple from the previous film that lived in the house. He discovers a diary that belonged to Kayako Saeki. This is the diary that Takeo discovered, which revealed Kayako's love and obsession for another man. In an earlier scene, the coffee cup spills onto Tomoko's notebook and it briefly turns into Kayako's diary, which was very easy to miss. The crew return to the TV station and this is where the film really starts to pick up. Megumi begins combing the hair of several black wigs, and that's when I realized,
did I leave the stove on?
But really, seeing all those black wigs really gave me chills. Meanwhile, Keisuke falls asleep on the job while reviewing recordings of the show, and we hear the noise that kept the sound guy from simply doing his job.
この家の雰囲気には何か。
We also see shots of Toshio and another ghost who will never catch their big break as the director fell asleep on their audition tapes. Megumi is drawn to a noise behind the curtain and sees the same black spot from inside the house. One of the wigs begins to move on its own and starts moving towards Megumi, who falls back completely terrified. Megumi mirrors the exact same position and movements as Kayako at the time of her death. The wig then manifests into Kayako herself and kills Megumi. In the next chapter called Keisuke, Masashi finally wakes up from his coma. We don't know exactly how long it's been, but we can at least say 3.5 months due to the doctor's estimate on Kyoko's pregnancy. Masashi has not regained the ability to speak and is now a shell of his former self. Kyoko tells him that she is still pregnant and places his hand on her belly. It's unclear what Masashi was exactly thinking, but I think he was trying to say, "That's not my child." Keisuke arrives at the hospital and tells Kiyoko that a majority of the crew died or went missing directly after the shoot. Upon returning home, Kiyoko sees Megumi entering her house. Megumi is now clearly a ghost and shows herself to Keisuke. She drops Kayako's diary and the pair begin to investigate where the curse originated. As they are the only ones remaining of the crew, Keisuke believes they have been left alive for a reason. While making copies of the diary, the copy machine begins printing on its own, giving us one of the film's most effective and original scares. Keisuke walks out of the room while Kayako's creepy face can be seen keeping an eye on him. Kiyoko is sound asleep in her house when the ghost of Megumi crawls out of a black spot on the ground. Just as she is about to touch Kiyoko, the ghost of her mother saves her by grabbing her arm and waking her up. She returns to the Saeki house on her own, hoping to find answers. Once inside, she sees a young girl pounding on the front door and screaming for her friend Hiromi on the other side. Kayako comes crawling down the stairs just as she did in the first film, and Kyoko passes out from fear. The next chapter is titled Chiharu and has the most convoluted time loop of the entire film. Chiharu previously appeared in the first film and was one of Izumi's friends. Aside from Kayako and Toshio, Chiharu is the only character to return from the previous film. The chapter begins with a creepy first-person aerial shot of something flying through the streets of Tokyo. We then see the young girl Chiharu inside of the Saeki house being stalked by Toshio. She wakes up in her bed, showing that it was all a dream. She walks to school with her friend Hiromi, who says her cousin is looking for extras for his next movie. This is where Chiharu comes into contact with Kiyoko, who at this point is already cursed. However, Chiharu became cursed when she came into contact with Izumi in the previous film. We see the same scene from earlier in the film, now told from Chiharu's perspective. Because of her recent nightmares about the house, she screams off script at the sight of an actress portraying a ghost during a shoot. She then stands there petrified as she sees the ghost of Toshio touching Kyoko's belly. She closes her eyes and is immediately teleported back inside of the Saeki house. She begins to bang on the door as Kayako crawls down the stairs. She manages to open the door and sees her friend Hiromi on the other side. She never undoes the latch on the door and instead grabs a hold of Hiromi's heart necklace. She wakes up on the bus once again holding the necklace in her hand, which is also currently on Hiromi's neck. She tries to warn Hiromi about the house and runs off the bus terrified of everything that's going on. She runs into a bathroom stall and is followed by Hiromi, who begins knocking on the stall door. At this point, someone must be shaking an hourglass or something because Chiharu is teleported between different times and locations numerous times for an unknown reason. She sees Kayoko directly above her inside of the stall and runs out. She bumps into a boy playing soccer whom, if we pause at the correct time, we see is actually Toshio. The boy drops the ball, which then turns into Toshio's head, rolling around like a ball. Bumping into Toshio causes her soul to leave her body that she can now see lying dead on the floor. She tries to make contact with Hiromi, who seemingly does feel her hand on her shoulder. Kayako's white hand slowly grabs a hold of Chiharu from behind, and she again finds herself inside of the Saeki house. However, this time, Kayako is directly behind her, and she is pulled inside of the house, which is witnessed by Hiromi. Hiromi also finds herself caught in the time loop when she suddenly finds herself holding her dead friend in her arms, holding the exact same necklace currently wrapped around her neck. The time loop and dream sequences in this chapter were by far the most confusing, though I believe that they are meant to represent just how powerful the curse has become. Kayako is essentially toying with Chiharu and kills her at her peak of emotional distress and fear. But why does this only happen to Chiharu and no one else? The only logical reason I can think of is that at this point in the film, Chiharu has been cursed the longest, as she became cursed in the first film when she came into contact with Izumi. Just like in the previous film, the final chapter is titled Kayako. Keisuke arrives at the Saeki house immediately after Chiharu's death. He runs into Hiromi, who rushes past him without saying a word. Upon entering the house, he finds Kiyoko passed out on the floor. She is rushed to a hospital and seems to be going into labor. Masashi is seen on the roof of the hospital, not too enthusiastic about becoming a father. "I'm not the father." The doctors appear to deliver the baby, but all become extremely terrified at the sight of it. Toshio is standing right between Kyoko's legs and calling out "Mom" repeatedly. Kyoko passes out from shock, and we see that the idea of fatherhood was just too much for Masashi. Keisuke enters the delivery room and sees all the doctors lying dead on the floor. The baby crying suddenly turns into a ghostly moan as Kayako crawls out from Kyoko's birth canal and kills Keisuke. Kiyoko wakes up and hears her baby crying, wrapped up inside of a bloody plastic bag. This is undoubtedly the same plastic that was wrapped around Kayako. Right next to it is the black spot where Keisuke passed away. She then picks up her baby and embraces it. Sometime in the future, Kiyoko is now walking and holding hands with her daughter that appears to be approximately 4 to 5 years old. Kiyoko appears extremely weary and devoid of any emotion. A young boy holding a soccer ball crosses their path and seems intrigued by the little girl who is holding Kayako's diary. The evil little thing then pushes Kiyoko from the top of the stone steps. Someone get that boy into witness protection quick. The little girl is without a doubt a reincarnation of Kayako. This little girl was seen earlier in the film in a recording of the show. The little girl was standing in place of Kiyoko, showing that she was inside of her all along. The moment Kiyoko stepped into the house, she not only became cursed, but was chosen by Kayako for reincarnation. This is why Toshio is touching her belly throughout the film, as he knows that his mother is in there. As Keisuke stated, Kiyoko was kept alive for a specific purpose. She acted as a surrogate for Kayako and allowed her to be reborn. In the film's final scene, Mini Kayako takes her diary from Kiyoko. She looks back at her dying mother with a truly malevolent look on her face. In her last moment, Kiyoko looks at her daughter lovingly and extends her hand out to her. This seems to have no effect on Mini Kayako, who is filled with nothing but pure hatred. Kiyoko tragically dies at the bottom of the steps, and Kayako walks off on her own as the movie ends. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was Ju-ON The Grudge 2. I don't think that this film reaches the heights of its predecessor, but I still consider it to be a pretty solid sequel. The film has a decent number of scares and does some pretty cool, albeit confusing things involving time loops. I feel that Ju-ON The Grudge 2 is definitely an underrated film in the franchise that was overshadowed by the American remake that would come out the following year. If you enjoy Japanese horror films, I recommend you check out Ju-ON The Grudge 2 and let me know what you thought of the film in the comments down below. But my friends, as always, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you all for tuning in, and I cannot wait to see y'all right back here in the Horror Mine. Y'all stick around.